Thanks for having me. Hi, I'm Jonathan Mitchell. I'm an applications engineer here with Emerson's Discrete Automation Group. I work with our valves and our controls and software portfolio, but today I'd like to talk with you about HMI design. The idea for this talk came when I was spending some time with one of our integrators. We were at an end user that did chemical manufacture and processing. We went to their end of line where they did dispensing, and they had about 20 or so valves, quarter turn manual valves, and they were about 12 feet up in the air. And their process for switching over lines was an operator would grab a shepherd's hook and reach up there and manually flip a valve, and it would begin dispensing. Multi-million-dollar chemical plant, shepherd's hook. If that sounds familiar to some of you, that's all right? But it made me think that in most facilities, you have machinery that ranges from brand new, still being commissioned in some cases when you're there, to very, very close to end of life. And in those facilities, it is the management's responsibility to look at those machines and think about what are we going to do to keep from having to shut down, right? Most facilities don't want to shut down. So they have to consider, are they going to completely replace it? Are they going to do some sort of retrofit or modernization? And that's what got me thinking. Because usually in this modernization process, the HMI is a bit of an afterthought. Usually the HMI could get a hardware update, right? Someone will put in a new monitor, a new physical interface, but the project running on it is generally left completely untouched. And that is done by design. There are good reasons that people don't do that. However, I'd like to challenge that today. I would like to share with you a little bit of experience from a past career of mine doing design and build of web applications and interfaces. I'd like to share with you some of the principles of user experience design and talk about how when you apply them in an industrial setting, it will help you cut unexpected downtime out of your schedules, reduce the chance of a costly mistake or error, minimize the amount of training time that it takes to get an operator from brand new to comfortable on a machine, and then once that operator is comfortable on a machine, it makes them as fast and efficient as possible, and they're content with using that interface. At the end of this, I'll talk a little bit about why I think Emerson's Movicon platform is a great tool for achieving these goals. So before we jump into the how, I'd like to take a quick look at the what, right? User experience design, which is oftentimes shortened to UXD. I will use the two terms interchangeably today. It's a relatively niche topic under the umbrella of design. And if that's new to you, that is 100% okay. As I said, it's a niche topic. It began getting popular in the early 2000s to 2010s and has remained more or less on the periphery of design since then. So when I say design, I think what most people immediately tend to think of is graphic design, right? Graphic design is a line of thinking which affects the look and the feel of an application or a tool, right? It's about what shape will a button be or what color will something be. In the early 2000s, as most of us remember, computer graphics had a bit of a revolution. It was spurned by a couple things, but one of the biggest was large, clunky displays started to give way to smaller, lightweight, high-resolution displays, which allowed people to see graphics if they were made nicely. At the same time, graphic packages, right, the tools that graphic designers use to make their graphics, became more widespread, and the barrier to entry got lower than it had ever been before. So seemingly overnight, for anyone who was on the internet in the early 2000s, websites went from being just sort of blocks of text to overflowing with graphics. And for those who were not on the internet at that time, it's hard to imagine this. It was everywhere, though. There were sites that were entirely graphic, which was a huge departure from what we had seen before. And user experience design sort of emerged on the scene to rein in a little bit of this chaos, right? It sort of stands not in a direct opposition, but it frames every design decision made with the question, how does this affect the user and what they're trying to achieve right now, right? It's a very user-centric design philosophy. So let's take a look at industrial HMIs through this lens of user experience and put ourselves in the shoes of an operator who is using an HMI day in and day out in a facility, okay? First and foremost, right, you'd like your interface, the tool that you use, it should allow you to do your job quickly and efficiently. A lot of times, this makes that you need to make sure as a designer that you're putting information where it's expected by the user, right? But you also need to put controls alongside that information to allow the user to make decisions based on what they're seeing, right? There should generally be a fair bit of back and forth when you're designing these interfaces. And I know that sounds arduous, but I promise you, it's not as bad as it sounds, and it can start well before you ever start to formally make your HMI on a computer. I start this process actually with a sheet of paper and a handful of Post-it notes to make sure that as I'm laying things out, it makes sense and the information is near the controls that affect it. Beyond being able to do your job quickly and efficiently, as an operator, I'm sure you would agree, you would like the interface to make it hard for you to make an error. The second biggest thing I would say is minimizing the ability for the user to inadvertently do something. After that, I would say the interface should be easy to learn, right? Whether you're a veteran or it's your first day on a job, you want to be able to get into an interface and handle it without having to kind of feel lost, and it should feel intuitive as you get through it. After you learn it, you would like the interface to be memorable as well, right? If you go on vacation for a week or 2 weeks, or you get moved to another cell for a handful of months and operate different machinery but are asked to come back, you want to be able to retain the information that you had before, right? It shouldn't take very long for you to get back into the swing of things operating your machine. So once all those major milestones are met of making it quick and efficient, not prone to errors, easy to learn, and easy to remember, I would say you have a pretty good HMI on your hands. But I would also point out, it is very important to keep the line of communications between the design side and the operators themselves open, on a regular basis, right? This is at the heart of continuous improvement, which I know a lot of people think is very important in an environment like this. So it's important to constantly ask those questions, are you happy with this? Are there things we could improve on? Because if an operator, right, if you're an operator and you're not happy with the amount of control that you have over your machine, or you're not happy with the information that's being given to you when you're expected to make changes in a machine, then that HMI is failing to do one of its most fundamental jobs. It is a human-machine interface. If we're not concerned with what the human feels about it, let's scratch it. Just call it a machine interface and get it over with, right? So I've mentioned that user experience design is more common in what I would consider consumer-facing applications and websites, right? There are several reasons for this. For one, there are a lot more consumer-made apps and websites designed in a year than there are HMI or SCADA systems. Open the phone that you have in your pocket, go to the App Store, and you will see way more than you'll ever use. We don't design HMIs in such excess. But when they are designed, I also see that they are usually designed in a like-for-like manner. That is, they are generally replacing something. If they're replacing a previous digital HMI, they tend to take all the same controls, put them in exactly the same place, and maybe they move to a new software package because on the back end, it's more efficient or it's less computationally intensive. When they are replacing an analog control station, knobs, levers, dials with a HMI, it's oftentimes that they just kind of pick up everything and make a digital clone of it and give that back to the operators. And the explanation for that is not a bad one, right? Oftentimes, the excuse that I hear is that they want operators to feel comfortable on the new interface that they're being given. And that's a very valid idea. But I would also propose that another way to make your operators feel comfortable with what they're using is to include them in the design process and take their feedback as the system evolves. One of the big things that you lose when you imitate physical controls like for like on a digital interface is one of digital interfaces' probably strongest points, in my opinion. And this is going to blow your mind, tabbed navigation. I know that this is not actually groundbreaking, right? Open up any web browser you use, open up any app on your phone, and it's super common to see things broken out by like tabs. For some reason, I don't see it as often in HMI design. And people do it for a great reason, right? It helps you take a large amount of information and break it down into much smaller sections. We can fit more on a simple 11-inch display than you could have ever fit on a massive manual console that was full of knobs and levers today, right? So why don't we make use of that? Tabbing things out also helps with one of the things that we talked about, right? Helping the operator focus on the task at hand. By keeping information front and center and the controls that affect that information nearby, you do minimize the chance that the operator is going to do something in error. And if they do make an error, the information's right there. They're able to see the effect of the change that they made in real time and compensate for it as nearly to immediate as possible.